KTM 690 Enduro 10,000 mile review happening right now. All right, welcome back, subscribers. If you're not subscribed, consider doing so. I love KTM 690, so if you want to know about the KTM 690, I've got a decent channel for that. I've got lots of videos out for it already. We're going to talk about the 690 today, gentlemen, and maybe a lady. There might be a lady out there watching this video. There's not very many according to my Google Analytics. I have owned the KTM 690 now for 2 years and about 2 weeks, and I've done a few reviews. I haven't done one for a while. My last review, I think, was my 1 year review, so we're pretty much looking at a whole year since I've done a review for this bike. I've learned a lot about it. I've learned to appreciate it for many of its fine qualities, and I've learned its drawbacks and all sorts of things like that. We're going to talk about a few of those today. As always, my videos are completely freestyle. I leave a lot of stuff out of them. If you guys have questions, please comment down below, and if you like it, consider liking it too. So anyway, let's get started. All right, here she is, sitting in the dry forest of Hawaii, and I'm using the GoPro to record so I don't give you another windy review. We'll give her a quick little walk around here. Ooh, new tire. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Yeah. I don't know, they're kind of a cool looking bike for you know, sort of an adventure, big old dual sport bike. I really like the sleek lines of motocross bikes and things like that, but everybody's got their tastes. Some people like these things, some people like rally bikes. Anyway, it's a pretty good looking bike on the whole. First couple things we'll talk about is some of the things I did to it. So as you guys can see, it has different graphics on it. They're nothing real special. They're just something I found on eBay. There's not a lot of graphics kits available for the 690 out there, so I saw this one and it looks okay. It's kind of a knockoff kit, but it's a little bit thin, but it's held up really well. It's been on there for almost an entire year now. The day after I put it on, I was refereeing a triathlon, Ultraman to be exact, and I got blown off the road and took some hits in it. So you guys can't see those on the camera probably. Yeah, that's how windy it is right now. It's windy as hell. Yeah, big gust, probably 60-mile-an-hour gust just took me out. She's got 10,300 miles on it now. I've been meaning to do a review for about 300 miles, but I've been commuting it to work about 1 mile a day, so that tells you how long I've been wanting to do this. Recovering from a motocross crash, so there's not going to be any riding footage unless it's old riding footage in this video. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. One of the first things I did to it, matter of fact, I ordered this before I even owned the bike, was I put this Adventure Spec burly skid plate on this thing. If you're going to be riding it off-road with, you know, this kind of stuff around, you're going to want one of those. These bikes don't have a tremendous amount of ground clearance, as you can see, so you don't want to be banging that engine case that sits right underneath of there. This is a really burly aluminum one. I think it cost me like 175 bucks, but the reason I specifically got this is because it has this extended arm to protect the rear master cylinder. So very burly. I was also hoping to avoid this, which if you haven't seen that video, I'll put a card up. You can see it's got some chips in it. That's because the stock brake lever is very flimsy. So you can see I do not have the stock brake lever anymore. Well, maybe you don't know that, but this is not the stock brake lever anymore. And when I had it, the original one, it poked a hole in my case. We don't have to beat that horse. I've got lots of videos about that if you guys want to learn about that. I've had a wide variety of tires on this bike. It's currently not really an off-road bike for me anymore. This is the kind of extent of the terrain that it gets. I use it actually as my truck. I tow my motocross bike and my electric bike with the 690. I'll splice in just a quick clip of my trailer. What I did is I built a bracket. Well, technically I didn't build it. I designed it. My friend built it because I don't have a welder. I am a fabricator, but I don't have the tools. And it comes off the back and there's a trailer hitch, and then we built the trailer and my motocross bike would be sitting right here. So this is now my utility vehicle. And I'll tell you what, man, that gave me a whole new love for this machine. I mean, this bike has a lot of power, so when I've got a motocross bike behind it with a 75-pound trailer and tools and gear bags and all that stuff, and this bike does not have a problem just ripping up the mountain. I mean, we're talking high altitude, 6,000-7,000 feet with, you know, 9% grades, and this thing will just rip at 70 if you want. This thing's got power. It's deceptively fast. It's pretty smooth. We'll go up here to the dash real quick. It really likes to be ridden, get the glare out of there, right about 3,000 RPMs. And it actually is funny, it runs better when I'm towing the trailer because it puts the engine under a little bit of load. I only weigh about 150 pounds and I don't have any bags on this bike, as you can tell. I have had them on this bike before. But when it has a little bit more load on the engine, it'll lug and ride down in these lower RPMs a little bit better. It's definitely not the KLR type engine. So it likes to be somewhere around 3,000 RPMs. And you can kind of get down into the 26 range if you're going through corners and you're kind of rolling it on. But for the most part, it doesn't like to be down there. Now, if you were a 230, 260 pound guy, or you're a 175 pound guy with some saddlebags on it, this engine will lug a little bit better. If you're a lightweight like me, you know, when I'm in good triathlon shape, I'm 135 pounds, and this thing likes to be a little bit higher up in the revs. It doesn't put the engine under enough load. So she cruises about 60 with the stock gearing at, I think, around 4,500 RPMs. Don't totally quote me on that because I've had a lot of different gearing. If you're going to do a lot of highway riding and mostly fire road riding and not like kind of more trail riding, I would suggest putting the 16-tooth sprocket on the bike. It comes with 15-tooth, and that's sufficient for dual sporting. It gives you a little bit lower first gear, so you're not just riding the clutch all the time. But the 16-tooth sprocket, if you need to cruise at over 60 miles an hour, is a must. I mean, it really makes the bike ride nice at that 60 to 80 mile an hour range. So consider that if a lot of your riding is going to be on the highway. One thing that I really think you should do right off the bat, since we're down here, is get rid of the stock shifter and put the 2017 style shifters on these bikes. I don't know what the new the newer 2019, the 2021s have. This model is a 2018 model, which is similar to the 2012 all the way to the 2018, and even down to, I think, 2008 maybe. They're fairly similar, but they all have this other shifter on it that's really crappy, and the angle on it is weird, and it folds up kind of, and it kind of makes the bike miss shifts. So there will be a card up in the corner of the screen. Consider getting one of these shift levers. There will be a part number in that video, and you can sometimes find these things used on eBay. People like to put, you know, aftermarket shiny junk on there that doesn't work, and they get rid of their nice OEM mudless shifter. This is really nice. I ride commuting a lot, and I wear shoes. This happens to be a mountain running shoe, but anyway, it's just like your regular casual running shoe. And I commute a lot, and this is a really nice shifter. It doesn't hurt your foot like the original one. While we're down here again, this is another thing that you should put on the bike. So kind of top 3 things you should put on the bike are this skid plate so you don't bash the engine apart, this shifter so it shifts nicer, just has a lot more feel for the gears, and these are an adventure peg. You don't necessarily have to get this one. This is the original KTM one. I want to think they're about $160, but the stock pegs are too short on these things, and because of the width of the bike, which is fairly wideish, when you get your legs down here, and I'll use my arm as an example, you just go straight against the pipe and you go straight down, your foot ends up being hanging off the edge of the foot peg, and you really can't get a good grip on it very well. So consider getting the adventure pegs also. It comes with some handguards on them stock. They're just plastic ones. If you dump this, they're about 370 pounds. These bikes are the claimed weight stuff. That's all bull crap. Anybody that believes that, just get a clue and weigh the thing. So I put these Cycra Pro Bend Ultras, and they're actually really nice. These ones have these removable things so I can get airflow when it's hotter outside, but I was kind of commuting in the mountains, so I put the caps back in, so there's protects me from the rain a little bit better. But these things have just been smashed and smashed and smashed. Sometimes you will need to get a spacer to space them right away from the master cylinders and cables. You can see I just got a couple of washers in mine. You can go to a hardware store and get little spacers in the bulk hardware section, and you can space these out. I highly recommend doing that if your kit does not come with a spacer, because you can really space these out and make them fit a whole lot better. I highly recommend on these big bikes that you run the bolt all the way through and you nut it on the back side like I did. These things, because they're heavy, when they hit the ground, they can easily pull the threads out of these brackets and pull the bolts out, and then you're stuck there. This keeps it from destroying your handguards basically. So put a nut on these. It's not really necessary on a lightweight dirt bike, but it is on these big bikes and adventure bikes and stuff like that. If you notice, all my stuff's black, bolts all black. These are titanium. I live in a very corrosive environment in Hawaii. We have a lot of ultraviolet light. We've got a lot of just salty air, humidity, lots and lots of stuff like that. And you've just got to paint everything to keep it from rusting. So yeah, I do a lot of that. I do a lot of detailing. You can see 10,000 miles, a lot of it's some pretty serious off-road, and this thing looks really good. People think it's brand new all the time, and it's not even close. You've seen me in other videos jumping it and breaking parts off and all that sort of stuff. Talk about the equipment on it. Brakes, fantastic. It's got these big old Galfers on there. Very nice brake system. It's hard to beat Brembo. This is the top of the line stuff. This isn't chintzy you know, India bribery brakes, even though those brakes actually work pretty good. This is the real Brembo stuff on this. It's got this 48 millimeter Explorer fork. I don't know if they didn't call it Explorer this year. It might be a 4CS on this bike. I'm not quite sure exactly, but it's 48 millimeter, and it's they're only 10 inches of travel. So that's to get it down lower to the ground so that people can get over it. It's got a pretty decent seat height on it, but most of the problem is that it's wider. And when it's wider, it kind of spreads your legs out farther, and it keeps you from touching the ground as easy. So that's a thing. A lot of people do get them lowered an inch or whatever. I've got pretty long legs. It's not a problem, but it could be a problem in the trail if you're a shorter rider. So make sure that you got some decent handling skills before you take this big old girl out in the trails. Completely capable. It will take you anywhere you want. It just won't take you there real fast. And what I mean by that is you are not going to hammer the trails on this thing like you are a 500 EXC. That's a fantasy. When you see me riding this thing fast, I'm an experienced rider. I'm a very experienced motocross racer. I raced A-Class. I raced A-Class off-road, intermediate in motocross. I know how to handle the things. And so they're not as, you know, nimble as it looks when, you know, myself, or maybe you see Chris Birch riding one or something like that, but they are damn capable machines. They will take you anywhere that you need to go. Traction being the main limiting factor. And that is actually a big thing. I air them down pretty low when I go off-road. And if you air them down low, you're going to want to put rim locks in there, because if you spin your valve stems, and that's what happens when the tire slips, when it's too low a pressure, you can rip your valve stems and then you got a flat, and this thing will not be fun to ride with flats. So I put dual LiteLoc Motion Pro rim locks in this on the front. You get a lot of braking power on this bike on the street. I didn't want the slipping. And you can see my valve stem as straight as possible. I got the little mud guard things on the valve stems. Don't recommend this tire really. It's cupping really bad. I need to get rid of it. I've been meaning to take it off, but I haven't had time. This is a TKC80. I'm not a fan. I know a lot of people like them, but I'm not a fan. Anyway, it's okay. I'm just wearing it out. On the back here, currently I have this Metzler Karoo 3. Big fan of this tire on the street. I have not ridden it off-road except for on these little gravel roads, so I cannot attest to its off-road traction, but man, it handles really good on the street. It's a very round profile, so you can zig and zag on it. Worked a lot better than the Kenda Big Block I had on here. I would say it worked better than the stock MT21s. Definitely worked better than the knobbies I had on this. So on the road, these work really good. I think they put them on the 1090s and 1190s maybe. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like I remember seeing them on those bikes. Pretty happy with it so far. I think it's got about 1,500 miles on it. I don't know, with me riding, probably gonna last maybe 3,000. We'll see. Anyway, happy with that so far. If you're gonna ride it off-road, I would suggest getting some aggressive off-road tires and sacrificing a little bit on the street. So I like to run the Metzler MC360. The widest they have in that, I want to think, was a 120, and that's what I ran. I think they show that they make a 140, but I've never seen one. That was an awesome tire for off-road, and the front is pretty good too. So I highly recommend those tires if you're going to go off-road. They lasted really, really well. If you know anything about these bikes, they are tire eaters if you are heavy on the throttle hand. And so yeah, tires are big on this bike. It's been a great tire so far. This machine has really been awesome. It's gonna be a really long review, you guys, so I hope you're somewhat entertained. I had 2 problems with it under warranty, and they were not big problems. I don't know what happened, but if you look inside here at the starter, the little post on the starter right here broke internally, so it wasn't making a connection internally. So to start my bike for a while, I had to, I didn't know what the heck was going on, but I would reach down and I would push on the battery, the starter cable here, and I would push on it and it would make the connection inside, and I have to start the bike like that. Funny enough, I was taking my DMV test to get my new driver's license, and the damn thing fell out of the starter, and I'm sitting there dead, and like I'm the first one to go, and the lady's looking at me. Anyway, another story for another day. It was a bad time to fall apart, but KTM warrantied that, and that was right at the 1-year mark. I have no idea if something stuck in there and smashed it or what happened, but anyway, somehow it broke, and so KTM did that. They warrantied it. The other thing was I had a relay go bad, and I believe it was a turn signal relay. Turn signal relay went out, and KTM replaced that, no problem too. So everything that happened to this had happened under warranty, and they gave me no grief about it at all. To pop the seat, there is a little cable underneath here, and you can maybe see that. You pull that thing. I'm gonna do some shoddy camera work here for a second, and you just lift the seat at the same time when you're not using 2 hands to film. So this is what it looks like underneath the seat. There is no storage space. You can see there's the little quick release system. You have a map switch right here. I leave mine on the advanced map all the time. So that's that. These are all your kind of relays. There's some fuses and stuff in here. This is the fuse box. So if your headlight ever goes out, which I had an aftermarket headlight in my bike for a while and it blew the 15 amp fuse in here. You just access this little thing and all your fuses are right there. There is a couple spares in there. So that's that. I put a new taillight in this thing. It's a little tiny one. I'm sure that it's not completely legal, but it has been passing my DMV inspections. I screw in the rear turn signals when I go get those inspections, but this little LED has turn signals in it. I did have a video about that so you guys could get one, but the guy hasn't been making them for a while. I think maybe the Taco guys are going to be making them. If I can find it, I'll put a link. But anyway, what it did is it made the rear end a lot sleeker. I broke the rear end off when I was jumping when I first got it, and so it needed that. You can see my butchered airbox here a little bit. It's a kind of an ongoing experiment, but this concoction worked real good for me. It really does help it pull off the bottom, guys. I've seen people say that it doesn't work. You can't just, oh, it's fuel injection and trust me, it works. I have another airbox lid. I've taken it on, taken it off, ridden it for days with it on, and then as soon as I took it back off again and put this more open system back on, immediately you can feel a difference in the power. Now there's something that I want to say. If you do this kind of thing, there's a disclaimer. There is a system of resetting the throttle and resetting the ECU. So when you do this, I reset the ECU. And first thing you do is you turn the key on and the accessories come on. We'll just do it just for giggles. Comes on, see the tack do all that stuff. And then you reach over to the throttle and you turn it very slowly all the way to the stop. And then you turn it all the way back. That resets the throttle position sensor or something. So if your bike ever starts to run kind of rough and weird, sometimes that little thing right there will cure it. And so just the other day, I changed my air filter system. I went from this twin air one back to the paper one because I cleaned it and it was drying. And so I did that where I had to reset the throttle. And the next thing that you also want to do if you make any changes like this is if you want to do the 15-minute ECU reset. So all you do is you turn the bike on with a dead cold engine, cold, start it. Do not touch the throttle after you start it, or even when you start it. Just start it up and you let it idle for 15 minutes and then you shut the key off. That's all you do. And that resets the ECU. And I used to be kind of anal about that. I used to do that at altitude and stuff too. I don't worry about it. Don't think that you have to do that kind of crap, but it kind of, I feel like it really makes your bike run really well if you do that. It adapts to the environment. The fuel injection adapts, and I'll tell you, it made a big difference. My throttle was kind of blah 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 blah, and I did the throttle reset and it smoothed it right out. Speaking of throttles, another must-have mod, and I'm going to put a card to this because I really want you guys to do this. Myself and another guy, and technically it was the other guy, but it was sort of my idea. I hate the slop, the factory slop in the throttles. And this is the same throttle that I have on my e-bike. And it's ride-by-wire. There's no cable. It's electronic. Everything is electronic. And you can see I got a little bit of slop in there, but that's because my throttle tube was a little bit worn from riding the dog crap out of this thing off-road. It just kind of wore the edges off of the plastic. But inside here, I'll put a card to the video. There's these little shims that go over the throttle tube, or actually it's over the chunk, the little thing in the throttle, and it takes all the slop out of your throttle. When you're riding through this town and you know you've got all that slop in your throttle, it really smooths the bike out a lot. And it made a big difference. I've been really happy with that. And so I highly recommend that you do that. It seems expensive. It's not. I can't remember what it is. It's like 30 bucks. The guy's making them. Anyway, we got it. It works perfect. Spend the money to do it. I am not commissioned on that. He does me no favors. The only thing that I got from him is when we developed it, he gave me the free ones so that I could test them and make sure that they worked perfectly. Otherwise, I have no affiliation, so I'm not selling you guys this stuff other than I'm selling you on the idea of it because it works so well. So the throttle mod also works if you have a KTM e-bike, if you found my channel through that. Super, super awesome. That's the main things that I've really kind of done with it. Just the Airbox mod, just different tires. I've tried a bunch of different kinds of tires. You can see I still got the stock exhaust. I don't love it. Mostly what I don't love about it is it's really hot. The thing I do love about it is pretty quiet, so it doesn't piss off all my neighbors. But I really would like a new pipe and a little bit snappier, you know, just a little better throttle response. It's not like it needs more power. I'm not like an egomaniac like that, but it works really good. Underneath here you can get an accessory tank. It's not cheap. I want to think it's around 400 bucks. The guys at Rade Garage, I think, make it, and it's an under tank that gives you auxiliary fuel. It pumps you out about another 60 miles, I think, and then it puts the airbox down here. Basically the airbox comes right off of the throttle body, which is right in there, and so it's really, really cool. You can get a little bit extra fuel. I've really kind of wanted one, but I live on an island. I really don't travel that far. It's just me being lazy, not going to the gas station before I go on a trip. The other thing I did do is I did some stiffer fork springs in this bike. If you really want this thing to work well off-road, you should probably have everything revalved. It's just not really set up for that, but I put some stiffer springs in there. I can't remember exactly what I put in there at the moment. I want to say they're 56s. But when I was riding this thing off-road a lot more aggressively, the springs helped tremendously because the bike didn't dive into the travel so far. It had a lot better hold up, and it didn't want to knife on under all the time. And because there's so much weight and momentum going forwards on one of these things, it was always kind of diving and knifing. So the stiffer springs made a big difference. I'm only 150 pounds, but I ride aggressively, so I would say if you're over 180 pounds and you have some experience, you should probably maybe consider putting some springs in there if you're going to ride it more aggressively off-road. The stock springs actually work really well just riding on the street, etc., etc. So I need to still remove a couple of preload shims out of mine because it's a little stiff up front for me, but it works pretty good. I have no complaints. Not enough that I won't get off my lazy butt and do it. That's pretty much it, you guys. I love this machine. I have no regrets on buying it. If you're considering buy one, I highly, highly recommend these things. The new version of it, the 19 to 21s, those things are awesome. They've got, the better traction control stuff on them. The only thing I really kind of dislike on this bike is the ABS. I've been meaning to get the dongle to turn it off. You will die off-road if you leave the ABS on. Funny story, I took Ryan Hughes out riding. If you don't know who Ryan Hughes is, he's a legendary motocross rider, and he's like, hey man, I want to take my girlfriends up the mountain. So I'm like, yeah, sure, it's 690, she'll take you up the mountain. So Ryan had himself, former Red Bull KTM rider, and 2 girls on the back of this thing, and there was these other 2 dudes, and he rode them to the top of the mountain. And we're talking from 5,000 feet to 9,500 feet up this dirt road. Gnarly stuff. The guy's a beast, man. Anyway, 3 people on this thing all at once, and he rides up to the top of the mountain. The clutch did fade on the 690. He lost it, but we sat there and let it cool for about 10 minutes, and it came back. But he went back down the mountain twice. These are slippery roads, rocks. I mean, they make this stuff look like baby poop. And he had the ABS on, and he was riding down the mountain, and got down the bottom. He's like, oh, the brakes weren't working and stuff. And I was like, no, the brakes are great on this bike. And he's like, oh, and I was like, oh man, I forgot to turn the ABS off. So if you go off-road and you forget to turn the ABS off this thing, you are in for a real treat. And that's not a good thing. So all you have to do to turn off the ABS is you have to come to a complete stop, and you push the third button on here and you hold it for probably about 5 seconds, and it turns the ABS off, and then you have full use of the rear brake. It's great rear brake I just put on here, rear brake pedal I should say. I believe that was from Rade Garage as well. I have a video about that. I have a big playlist that I'm going to link to at the end for you guys, so you can learn all you could ever possibly need to know about these 690s. Once again, fantastic motorcycle. If you're up in the air on whether you want one of these or a KTM 500 EXC, you really have to weigh what you're going to do with the bike. The 500 EXC is not like an awesome road bike. If you have a lot of pavement, let's say you live in Colorado or something, and you've got a long ways to go on kind of a freeway before you get into the mountains, or you know, Arizona or something like that, the 500 EXC is really not the machine for that. Don't flame me if you have a 500 EXC. I understand what the 500 EXC is. I've ridden plenty of them. It's a lighter vehicle. It's more off-road oriented than the 690 is. This is essentially a Duke with dirt bike tires. I mean, it's got different geometry and stuff, of course, but it's really awesome on the street. And the way that I kind of, it's hard to explain, but this 690, when you're riding it on the street, feels like a dirt bike when you're riding it off-road. So if you really want a dirt bike feel on the street, get the 690. When you ride a 500 EXC or a 350 EXC or one of those, you know, enduro bikes on the street, they kind of feel like a light, sketchy dirt bike. They don't feel as planted as this thing. This thing feels really planted. It's really nice to ride at high speeds. Don't exceed the speed limit, but they ride really nice at high speeds, and you're really gonna love the ride on the road. The sacrifice is when you start getting off-road, especially if you're on, you know, slippery stuff or mud. You really start to feel that extra 80 pounds or whatever that these things weigh. And so you just really have to be honest with yourself and think about what you're going to be doing with it. You know, if you like to shoot pistols and rifles, or you're hunting and you just want to get out in the woods and you're riding fire roads most of the time, man, this thing is the bee's knees. It's got a little bit more range, unless you put a tank on the 500 EXC, which would honestly be cheaper, and you could probably get a bigger one than you can for this. But this is really nice for the road and fire roads. It's nice and quiet. You know, it's got lots of power. You can put the bags, everything. You can put extra weight on there. And it still handles fine. It's set up for that. But if you really want a dual sport where you're just going to be on, you know, pavement some, and a lot of it's, you know, under 50 miles an hour, and then you want something that's really awesome in the trail, then my suggestion to you would be to get the 500 EXC. In a perfect world, you want both. And honestly, I didn't get a 500 EXC, but I got a 350 EXC, and I had this at the same time. And honestly, I just sold the 350 EXC, and now I have a 250 XC, which is not street legal, and I have this. So, you know, there's that. I guess there's one thing here I forgot to tell you about. I have some Steg Pegs. I haven't been riding it off-road, but I left the brackets on there because it helps protect the tank and stuff from boots rubbing on it and things like that. So if you don't know what these are, there's rubber pucks, and I'm going to show you guys my legs real quick. You can lock your legs into the rubber pucks, and on a big machine like this, it's got lots of power. You know, it pulls you off the back, and so you can really lock into those pucks. And so when I was climbing up the mountain and stuff a lot, I had the Steg Pegs on there, and pretty cool little device, but totally awesome. I'm going to leave you guys with that because I could babble on for days about my big, beautiful beast, my KTM 690. I hope you guys get a chance to ride one of these, and if you already have one, you already know how awesome they are, and you're probably just nodding your head saying, yeah, dude, I understand, I get it. She's awesome. It's got a big old radiator here in the front, which also could be a hazard if you're taking a lot of dumps off-road. The plastic's not as cheap as a 500 EXC, so you don't really want to be dumping it all the time. But anyway, she seems to be holding up pretty good. I haven't been super nice to her. I don't know. I think dirt bikes like it when you use them like they're supposed to be. But she's pretty much retired to a tow vehicle now. All right, guys. I hope that was fairly informative for you. Like I said, if you like 690 videos, consider subscribing. Check out the playlist that's going to pop up here at the end. There's some cards on the side so you can link to those other videos, and maybe I'll put a list of those down below, even though they're all in the playlist. But I hope that maybe helps somebody make a decision on whether they want to buy one of these or not. You know, there's a lot of people that are haters out there, a lot of nonsense around these bikes. Don't listen to them. It's stupid. All bikes have some problems. This one's no exception. Maintain it correctly. Take care of it. Treat it like it's your baby. Hopefully you treat your baby well. Anyway, treat it like it's one of your kids, and be nice to it, and give it the love it needs, and the parts it needs, and the maintenance it needs, and it'll treat you wonderfully. This thing it's been a big joy. When I first got it, I had just a tiny bit of regret that I didn't get a 500 EXC, but in hindsight now, I did not make the wrong decision then, and definitely as I got back into the dirt bikes more and I had other off-road bikes, it was not the wrong decision to buy the 690 over the 500 EXC. I probably wouldn't have enjoyed the 500 EXC off-road that much, being a smaller guy. It's just a little bit more bike than I need to manhandle. I don't have an ego. I'm not scared of the power. Give me a break. But I like having those smaller bikes when I'm doing kind of hardcore stuff. And I like having this nice big bike when I'm just ripping up the mountain, and it's not bogging down, nothing. And, you know, if you're considering other bikes in the same class, which aren't really in the same class, you know, let's say the KLR 650, the DR 650, the Honda 650, those bikes are not in the same class as this. They're cheaper price points, and they're cheaper price points for a reason. They do not have the performance of this machine. If you just need a lawn tractor that you don't have to worry about, and you're terrible with maintenance, and you don't know anything about motorcycles, then those bikes are fine machines. I'm not going to badmouth them. They're just not high performance machines like these 690s. These things are bad to the bone. Those other bikes are good bikes. They are not bad to the bone. I bought a KLR 650. I had it for 30 days. I hadn't even made the first payment yet. And I took it back and I traded it in for this 690, which I should have gotten in the first place, but I didn't think I could afford. And it ended up costing me like almost $1,000 to make that mistake. And the KLR was a good machine for commuting around on the road, but when I got it off-road, it did not have the kind of performance that I was looking for. I don't ride like a little old lady on Sunday, so even when I get my big old dual sport out there, I still like it to have some more performance than the KLR or something was going to provide me. So all those things considered, you've been informed. This video is probably like 40 minutes now, so I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you always, and consider liking it if you learned something. Thank you guys. See ya.